They called him a monster, a demon, a psychopath who turned innocent people into twisted works of art. But he never saw himself that way. To him, every kill was a masterpiece, every scream a note in his symphony, every drop of blood a brushstroke on his canvas. They hunted him for 4 years, and when they finally caught him, they asked one question: why? His answer was simple: beauty requires sacrifice. This is a story of Khada Jhin, the golden demon, the virtuoso, a man who doesn't kill for revenge or power or madness. He kills because to him, death is the highest form of art, and art must be perfect. Before he was a killer, Jhin was a boy, born in a small village in Ionia's Yun province to a family of traveling performers, actors, dancers, stage builders who brought theater to life across the rural countryside. Art was in his blood. His father built the stages, his mother painted the backdrops, and young Jhin, he watched, absorbed, studied every detail. The way light fell across a performer's face, the precise timing of a dramatic pause, the way a single moment could move an entire audience to tears. He was obsessed with perfection. But theater wasn't enough, because theater was fake, scripted, controlled. The emotions were performed, not real. Jhin craved something more, something genuine, something visceral. He found it in death. No one knows when it started. Some say it was an accident during a performance. Others believe it was always inside him, waiting. But one night, in a small provincial theater, the lead actor died on stage. Not from the script, from poison. And as the audience gasped in horror, young Jhin stood in the wings, watching the chaos unfold. He saw the raw, unfiltered terror on their faces, the authenticity of their shock, the beauty of a moment no one could predict or control. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen, and he wanted more. His first deliberate kill came weeks later. A traveling merchant was found arranged in his wagon, positioned like a sleeping statue, surrounded by flowers. It looked peaceful, almost serene, until they noticed the merchant's face was locked in a silent scream. Jhin had discovered his true medium. Not paint, not words, not music. Death. And like any artist, he would spend years perfecting his craft. Over the next 4 years, Ionia's Yun province became a gallery of nightmares. Villages woke to find their neighbors transformed into grotesque sculptures, bodies positioned with surgical precision, limbs arranged in impossible angles, faces frozen in their final moments of terror. But these weren't random acts of violence. Every scene told a story. Every corpse was placed with intention. Every drop of blood served a purpose. The locals whispered about a demon, a spirit of vengeance, something supernatural that hunted in the night. They called him the Golden Demon, after the golden dust often found at his crime scenes, theatrical powder from old stage performances, his signature. But Jhin wasn't a demon. He was an artist, and he had rules. 4. Always 4. 4 victims per performance, 4 shots in his custom-made pistol, 4 beats to his symphony of death. The number obsessed him, consumed him. Perfection required structure. Chaos needed framework. And 4 was his sacred number. Each murder scene was more elaborate than the last. He didn't just kill, he choreographed. One village found the family arranged as if sitting for dinner, their dead eyes staring at empty plates. Another discovered bodies hanging from cherry blossom trees like grotesque ornaments, positioned to sway in the wind. He painted with organs, sculpted with bone, composed with screams no one lived to hear. To Jhin, these weren't crimes. They were masterpieces, exhibitions of his genius, proof that death, when executed perfectly, transcended mere murder and became art. But art required an audience, and Ionia was watching in horror. The Kinko order was dispatched to end the terror. Master Kusho, the Eye of Twilight, his son Shen, and the young warrior Usan, who would one day become Zed. For 4 years, they tracked him, following the trail of bodies, studying his patterns, learning his obsessions. Shen saw the crimes and compartmentalized. Duty demanded focus, not emotion. Usan saw the crimes and felt his sanity fracture. Every village was another nightmare that wouldn't leave his mind. Every family torn apart was another crack in his faith. And Kusho studied Jhin like a scholar studies ancient texts, searching for meaning, for understanding, for the human buried beneath the monster. The breakthrough came at Jiom Pass. After 4 years of hunting, they cornered him. The 3 warriors expected a demon, a spirit, a creature of pure malevolence. Instead, they found the man, slender, elegant, calm. Khada Jhin stood before them wearing a theatrical costume, his face painted like a performer, and his hand a custom-made pistol, ornate, beautiful, deadly. He had been waiting for them. This was his finale, his greatest performance, the confrontation with those who hunted him. Usan drew his blade, 4 years of rage compressed into a single moment of violent intent. "Stop," commanded Kusho. Jhin smiled, not with fear, with appreciation. Here at last was an audience worthy of his art. 3 warriors who had dedicated years to understanding his work. They had studied every scene, analyzed every detail. They were his perfect viewers. And as Usan lowered his blade on Kusho's orders, Jhin saw something beautiful. A young man breaking, faith shattering, darkness growing. He recognized the kindred spirit, someone who understood that sometimes beauty required terrible sacrifice. They captured him, bound him, prepared to execute him for his crimes, but Kusho stopped them. "He is a prisoner," the master declared, "not a corpse." Jhin was dragged away, but as they led him to his page, he looked back at Usan one final time and smiled, a knowing smile, a prophetic smile, as if he could see the shadow that would one day consume the young warrior. Art recognizing future art. They imprisoned Jhin in Tula, a fortress prison designed to hold Ionia's most dangerous criminals. No trial, no execution, just isolation. For years, he sat in darkness, away from his art, away from his craft, away from everything that gave his life meaning. Most prisoners would break, go mad, lose themselves to despair. But Jhin planned. Every moment in that cell was spent designing his masterpiece, the performance that would eclipse everything he had done before, his magnum opus, the work that would prove, once and for all, that death was the purest form of beauty. And then, something unexpected happened. Master Kusho came to visit. Not once, many times, in secret. The Eye of Twilight would sit outside Jin's cell and talk about philosophy, about balance, about the nature of art and violence. Kusho was trying to understand him, to find redemption in the monster, to believe that even someone like Jhin could be saved. Jhin played along, spoke of regret, of understanding, of change. He told Kusho what the old master wanted to hear, because Jhin understood people. He understood their desperate need to believe in redemption, their weakness for hope. Years passed. Ionia descended into chaos. Noxus invaded. War consumed the land. Resources became scarce. And in the chaos, Kusho made a decision that would haunt him. He believed Jhin had changed, believed the artist had found peace, believed that genius, properly directed, could serve balance instead of chaos. So Kusho did the unthinkable. He released Jhin, gave him a new identity, a new purpose, sent him to hunt Noxian targets, to use his skills for Ionia's defense. It was a secret, a burden Kusho carried alone, a gamble that balance could be found even in the darkest soul. He was wrong. The moment Jhin tasted freedom, the artist returned, not to serve Ionia, but to create his greatest work. Freedom tasted like possibility. Jhin emerged from his cage not as a broken man, but as an artist reborn. The years in darkness hadn't dulled his vision, they had refined it, perfected it, transformed it into something far more dangerous than before. His first act of freedom was acquiring a weapon worthy of his art, not a simple blade or common gun, but a masterpiece of engineering, a shoulder-mounted cannon disguised as an elegant rifle. He called it Whisper. 4 shots. Always 4, each bullet a work of art in itself, ornate, precise, deadly. The weapon was an extension of his philosophy. Beauty and death merged into a single instrument of perfection. But Jhin had evolved. He was no longer the golden demon who haunted small villages. He was the virtuoso, and his canvas had expanded, the entire world. He began in Ionia, but his performances spread across Runeterra, Piltover, Zaun, Demacia. Anywhere chaos and war created the perfect stage for his art. Each kill was more elaborate than the last. He didn't just murder his victims, he transformed them. One scene showed a Noxian commander arranged like a conductor, dead hands positioned as if directing an orchestra of corpses. Another revealed a gang of criminals frozen in a dance, their bodies propped against each other in a grotesque waltz. Jhin had learned something in his cage: subtlety, patience, planning. He no longer killed impulsively. Every performance was meticulously designed, every victim carefully chosen, every detail obsessively perfect, and always, always the number 4. He sent calling cards before his performances, cryptic messages written in elegant script, warnings that doubled as invitations. Your final act approaches. The stage is set. In Carnage, I bloom. Because what was art without an audience? What was genius without witnesses to appreciate it? Jhin didn't hide from those who haunted him. He wanted them to chase, to study his work, to understand his vision. The terror he created wasn't a side effect. It was the point. The fear, the uncertainty, the desperate hunt for meaning in his madness. All of it was part of the performance, and Runeterra became his theater. Authorities tried to catch him, hired assassins, deployed elite forces, sent the best hunters from every nation. They all failed, because they were trying to catch a madman. But Jhin wasn't mad. He was an artist. And artists don't get caught until their masterpiece is complete. Today, Jhin walks free, not because he's unstoppable, but because he's patient. He kills not for pleasure, but for perfection. Each performance carefully planned, each victim meticulously selected, each scene designed to communicate a truth that words cannot express. Death is beautiful. Chaos is art. And in the hands of a master, murder transcends violence and becomes poetry. Some say he's working towards something, a final performance, a masterpiece so profound, so perfectly executed that it will force the world to see what he sees: beauty in destruction, perfection in death, art in the ending of life. Others believe he has no endgame, that the killing is the purpose, that each performance is both beginning and end, that Jhin will continue until someone finally stops him, or until he stops himself. But Jhin knows the truth. Every great artist is misunderstood in their time. History judges harshly what it doesn't comprehend. The masses call him monster because they lack the vision to see his genius. The authorities hunt him because they fear what they cannot control. But fear and misunderstanding don't diminish art, they validate it. Proof that the work is challenging, uncomfortable, real. Somewhere in Runeterra, Jhin is preparing his next performance, selecting his stage, choosing his cast, planning every detail with obsessive precision. Because to him, this isn't murder. This is expression. It's communication. It's the only language that speaks truth in a world built on comfortable lies. And when his work is complete, when the final shot is fired and the last body falls into its perfect position, he will step back and admire what he has created. Not with guilt, not with regret, but with the quiet satisfaction of an artist who has achieved exactly what he set out to accomplish: perfection. In his own words, whispered over every crime scene, written in blood and shadow and terrible beauty, in Carnage, I bloom, like a flower in the dawn. This was Jhin, the golden demon, the virtuoso, the artist who kills. A man who proved that the line between genius and madness is measured not in sanity, but in vision. And his vision, it's written in the bodies he leaves behind. 4 at a time. Always 4. Perfect, beautiful, terrible art.